Head to Berwick-upon-Tweed. South or southwest 3 to 5. Rain, then showers. Good, occasionally poor.
So yes, it's true. I've decided to sell my much loved Honda CRF300L Rally and get a bog standard Honda CRF300L, the non-rally version. So in this video I'm just going to explain why on earth I decided to do that. And first up is ergonomics. Okay, ergonomics then. Now, when I'm talking about ergonomics, I'm actually just referring to trail ergonomics and not the ergonomics of the bike when it's on the road, because actually it's a really nice, comfortable place to be on the road, you know, the width of the tank and the fairing and the screen and everything. But it's those things which kind of work against it for me when I'm off-road on the trails. So it is just a little bit too wide, and also I sometimes get that sensation of that I'm looking through plastic when I'm looking ahead or looking through the screen, which I don't like. And what the width of the tank means is that when I'm stood up, I can't grip the tank or the frame rails with my knees, you know, when I'm stood up and going over rough ground, because I use that to help brace myself. And also I find it difficult to slide forward and weight the front end. So as I'm after a pure trail bike, I wanted the best ergonomics I could get. I find the Rally, I mean, it's a great compromise, but I find the Rally just a little bit too wide for that, hence the CRF300L. Well, yes, I'm very impressed. It is much better for me ergonomically when I'm riding the trails. And I think the main one is that it's so narrow around the tank, as you can see in this shot, that it's a lot easier to grip the frame with your knees and the back end of the tank when you stood up. So what that means is you've got three main contact points then when you stood up and you're riding off-road. So you've got your feet, you've got your knees, and obviously you've got your hands. And it just makes you and the bike feel much more stable and much more, and it just feels a lot more confident inspiring when you're doing that. So when I was riding the Rally, I felt like I just had two contact points. So, you know, my feet and my hands. So it always felt as though my knee, and you know, I've got a bit of a dodgy knee, excuse me. It always felt as though my knee was taking the brunt of the shocks, which is, you know, not ideal for me. But now I've got the three contact points and it works much better for me when I'm trail riding. But I will say that the ergonomics for road riding, yes, are very compromised now. So I was riding the bike back home from Newcastle from the dealership, and I had to do, you know, like 20 minutes on the dreaded A1. And I thought, oh my God, this is awful. You know, it felt really small and narrow, and it wasn't too pleasant. It's perfectly fine, but yeah, it wasn't too pleasant. So if you are doing lots of distance on tarmac, definitely the Rally is your better choice, and it's still rather good off-road as well. So this is just a quick illustration of what I mean about sliding forwards. So I'm now able to do that and have my elbows up at the same time, which is, you know, the best way of being able to control the bike. And weight in the front end is great when you're going around corners, you know, and the surface is loose. And I wasn't really able to do this on the Rally. So for me, this is a massive improvement, and it just makes me feel a lot more comfortable. You know, and when I used to ride very old enduro bikes like a million years ago, you know, this is what you did. So I'm kind of very comfortable with riding like this. So this makes a massive improvement for me. Being able to slide forward, get your elbows up and get the whole shot. As if. And the second reason for swapping, or something that I wanted to get out of the swap, was a bike that would be lighter. So obviously when you're green laning, when you're off-road, lighter is best, of course. Now the Rally isn't a particularly heavy bike, you know, in comparison to what's out there at the moment. It's 151 kilos. But if I was going to swap, and I was determined to swap for the ergonomics, I didn't want to swap for anything heavier. So there's not much out there really that's on the market at the moment. Certainly the Chinese bikes are a little bit heavier than this, you know, even the Vogue 300 and certainly the CF Moto 450. And also with the 450s, I'm not interested in that kind of power at all, which I'll come on to later. So really there's not that much out there. There's the Beta Alp, there's the KTM 350 Freeride, which is no longer in production. And to be honest with you, I was, or I am, and I remain very interested in the KTM 350 Freeride. I've never ridden one, but you know, are over 100 kilos, and it's got a down-tuned 350 KTM EXE engine in it. Could be a right little cracker. So if anyone's got one or anyone's ridden one, I'd be really keen to understand your thoughts on that. But there's not many available. So in terms of the bikes that are available, you know, fit the criteria of the ergonomics and something lighter than this, I mean, what else is out there? CRF300L, the standard version. So that's another reason why I've gone for the slightly unimaginative choice of the bog standard CRF300L. You know, it's 141 kilos, this weighs 151. I know there's a bit of a petrol differential there, you know, in terms of the full tank, but it's still lighter than this. And any more lightness is an absolutely great thing to have. I mean, I know things like, you know, as I say, the CF Moto and the Voge, they're not too heavy for off-road, but if I was going to swap, I wanted something lighter. So there we go, that's the CRF300L. And I suppose the question is 10 kilos lighter, is it actually noticeable over the rally? Well, it is, to be honest. I mean, it's not night and day. When you're riding it, it's a very subtle difference, but you do know the bike is lighter. It feels very light on its wheels, and also it's less top heavy than the Rally as well, presumably because of the petrol tank and also the fairing and the plastics and stuff. But where you really do notice it is if, or rather when, you get stuck. You know, like if you get stuck in a bog or a rut and you have to lift the back end, or you've got to push the bike somewhere, you know, to get out of a snotty place. That's when you'll really notice the 10k difference between this and the Rally. And as I've said many times before, that's something I really value because I've got the upper arm strength of an adolescent hamster. So 10 kilos lighter, 141 kilos in total, works for me, and it's worth swapping it for that, for me at least personally. And then I guess the third thing is slightly shallow, but it's to do with the aesthetics and the looks of the bike. Now, I do think the CRF300 Rally looks absolutely amazing. I mean, it's an incredible looking thing. I mean, it looks pretty much exactly like the 450 Rally bike, you know, that races in the Dakar and elsewhere. I think it looks absolutely brilliant. But it is a bit in your face and it is a bit bright. And I do like to fly under the radar a little bit. And I've always liked dirt bikes in particular, not just because I do ride them, but I've always liked the design of them because they're very purposeful. You know, like a motocross bike or an enduro bike, the only reason it looks like that is for function. I mean, they look brilliant, very functional, very purposeful. So that was another reason as well. That was like a, you know, like a bolt-on reason for wanting to swap the Rally as well. It's a sheep in wolf's clothing. You know, it looks amazing, but it's only a 300 with 25 horsepower. And I think the 300L looks like a proper off-road bike. It's very purposeful looking, and with the grey colour in particular, you know, it kind of flies under the radar a little bit. So I don't feel as ostentatious as I do when I'm riding the Rally. But I will still say I think the 300 Rally is a fabulous piece of design and styling. I think it looks completely amazing. But this, the 300L, is much more my cup of tea, to be honest. It's a lot more low-key and understated, particularly in the grey, which is something that I really like. And I think, you know, when you're out on the trails, this kind of level of understatedness, it's less likely to create any sort of negative adverse impression, you know, from other people that are using those trails. So that's something I really like, to be honest, you know. So visually, it's not in your face, and of course, orally, it's not in your face as well. So those two things will create, or rather help give, you know, the most positive impression that you can for other users of those trails, which for me is a good thing. So yeah, I think it's a really nice, understated, not an ostentatious bike, and I really value that. So for me, it's really worth swapping from the Rally to this. And you never know, it might get mistaken for a DRZ4, who knows? So if you add those three things up, the ergonomics, the lightweight, not the aesthetics, but also, you know, kind of the lack of power as well, or easygoing power, what you actually get is that word, you know, easygoing. I need something that's really easy to use on the trails, and anything heavier, anything more aggressive than the CRF300L, the standard CRF300, you know, it's just not going to do it for me. It's going to make it a little bit harder, you know. And sure, these kind of lanes are pretty easy really. I mean, any of the bikes that I've discounted, you could easily ride them. But you know, for me, I just wanted to make it as easy as possible and have a bike that made it as easy as possible as well. I mean, I'm not a very good trail rider actually, you know, at all, and I'm really risk averse these days, you know, and if you follow the channel you'll know why that is. So you might say, well, why actually go trail riding? Why not just stick to the road? Well, a couple of things. Well, first of all, I feel safer when I'm trail riding, and also trail riding is just absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. Now, as motorcyclists, we all like a little bit of peace and quiet and serenity, you know, we love getting out to places and off the beaten track and riding really great quiet roads and things. And the beauty about trail riding is that literally within 2 minutes of hitting a green lane, you're in somewhere like this. There's nobody around, it's beautiful, it's quiet, you feel as though you're really in the countryside, there's the sound of birdsong, and it's just a really, really beautiful, gorgeous experience. So, you know, despite the risks, you know, despite the kit that you have to buy and everything else, it's just a wonderful way of experiencing life and having a really good time on your motorbike. And I also believe that it's completely true as well, you know, that old saying that riding off-road makes you a better road rider. Well, I think it does, to be honest. You know, you get used to the bike sliding around, you know, you get used to, you know, being really delicate and sensitive and having the feeling of throttle and clutch and gear control, which all translates to being a better road rider, I think. You know, unlike, say, for example, that other common saying, loud pipes save lives. What a load of old cock that is. So, have my expectations been met by swapping the Rally for the 300L? Yes, absolutely. I mean, to be honest with you, obviously the bike is a bit of a known quantity for me because I did have one previously. But in terms of what I needed for trail riding, and very gentle trail riding, the 300L is much better for me personally than the Rally. So, you know, it's going to spend the majority of its time travelling to trails and being on the trail. So from that perspective, the ergonomics, the weight and the aesthetics, they all add up to quite possibly the perfect swap for me. Now, whether it's the perfect swap for you or the perfect bike for you, you've got to really think about what it is that you want to do. So who is the bike for? Well, I suppose the first thing to say is, you know, it's not for herring down rocky, gnarly, horrible trails at high speed. It's a million miles away from a hairy-arsed enduro bike. But, you know, if you want to explore green lanes or you're just starting out, you're a beginner, it's the ideal bike for you because it is so easygoing, it's nice and light, and the power, which I mentioned before, you know, the power's easygoing as well. You know, you twist the throttle and it's not going to bite or melt your face off. So yeah, it's an easygoing trail bike. And if I think back to, I don't know, 30 years ago, I'd probably class it as a Honda XL update as opposed to a Honda XR update. So it certainly doesn't fit in that class of, you know, dual sport moving to competition bikes, you know, and certainly the new Suzuki DR4 is a world away in terms of capability. Now, I did think strongly about the Suzuki DR4, and you know, if I was a lot fitter and it was 30 years ago, I was 30 years younger, then the DR4 would be the one that I would want because it would allow me to do all the trails, it'd allow me to do some more gnarlier trails, and if, you know, the temptation got to me, I might enter it in a standard traditional enduro, time card enduro. You know, you could do that on the DR4 from what I've read about it and what I've heard about it. On the CRF, yes, you could do a time card enduro, but you probably won't have a very good time, especially if you were trying to make up some time, you know, you dropped a few minutes. So yeah, it's a play bike. Is it a beginner's bike? But I think also, you know, it's an old bloke's bike. You know, if you're not into speed anymore, you're not interested in doing the really gnarly terrain, you're never going to do the Erzberg rodeo, CRF300L is the one for you. And there's not much else out there, as I've said many times before. I think the the Chinese bikes, the 400s, the 450s and stuff, they're a lot more road biased. And while yes, you could do this trail with them, it wouldn't be as easy. And I think the other thing is with the bigger bikes, say like the 400 Scrambler, Triumph, or the CF Moto 450, if you really got the bug for trail riding, what you would then want to do is change the tyres for those bikes, and then they don't become very good on the road, you know, because 45-50 horsepower bike with knobblies, it's not good. It's going to shred them and it's going to feel horrible on the road. Whereas on this, if you put knobblies on the CRF300, given the power that it makes on the road, as long as you're careful, you'll be absolutely fine. So I think that's another thing you've got to consider. But I think if you want to gently explore Britain's, England's byways open to our traffic, the CRF300L is a great purchase, and I'm really enjoying it. And hopefully I've got a few good years of exploring some of these trails. So I hope you've enjoyed the video and it was of some use. So the next video about the CRF will be more of a traditional review, you know, once I've put a few more miles under its belt. And yeah, if you're curious, where I am at the moment is the Hart Hope Valley in Northumberland, and it is absolutely gorgeous. What a beautiful place. So hope you've enjoyed the video, and before I go, I would just like to say thank you again to Newcastle Motorcycles and the two Pauls for sorting me out with a bike. Right, I'll see you later.
Berwick upon Tweed to Whitby. South or southwest, 3 to 5. Rain or showers, good occasionally.